asked an expert in corporate governance to join us, Jeff Sonnenfeld. He's the Senior Associate Dean and Professor for the Yale School of Management. He joins us by phone. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. I think this is a very important story.
It really is, David. You know, there is obviously we're a meritocratic society, and in fact, we're a society that celebrates success. It's not a Bolshevik society that believes that we have to cut down all the tall poppies for everybody to be the same level. But there has to be a system of justice behind it. If you look at last year's CEO pay increases, they're up about 16%, and the average American worker is only about 3%. And there are some extraordinary outliers like John Hemingren, who, I don't know that he's a bad guy, by the way. I think he's a pretty good person otherwise, but this is a way oversized pay package alone before you add in the outrageous, if not obscene, pension.
I think, I think this story was first broken by the Wall Street Journal. It probably came out in a 10K or 10Q report where they had probably listed as a line item. I'm not sure when he is actually retiring, if in fact he is about to retire, but I think they had to divulge this in some way. Do you have the details on how this was done? Because I don't believe originally he was supposed to get this much.
No, it's some of it apparently has to do with some options maturation, but it still was an ill-conceived package. This is not a company where CEO has a great deal of personal capital at risk. He's not the entrepreneur that built this up. McKesson, ironically,
so he didn't start the company. He's not a founder of the company.
No, and in its earliest days, they had and in the early days of the Securities and Exchange Commission back in the 30s, this very company had a massive stock scandal back then with its top leadership, and we had it. Part of this is Hemingren came in after there was a scandal in buying an Atlanta-based health information company called HBOC. And in that merger, there was some revenue recognition problems, some false inflated numbers. The CEO, Charlie McCall, after many years of litigation, ultimately had to go to prison, and the stock was sliced in half. But it wasn't the performance of the company that was a problem. It was this mismanagement and mishandling of the financial reports that led to the stock to be cut in half. So it was a very good time to come in and get options, because the performance was so strong. So the business itself was a sturdy business. So he came in because of that blip, because of the loss of confidence in the firm. And then we have this extraordinary rise in the company since. Furthermore, it's a company which, it feeds off the public. It feeds off the government. It's Medicare and this particular company, heavily Veterans Administration. This is not a company where we take a look at how vital it is for this great U.S. icon to battle it out in a global marketplace. This is a largely domestic industry. It's certainly a domestic company that's not up against a lot of global competitors and what they're providing. It's again feeding off of government Medicare and medical payments.
To be fair, he's actually done a very good job with the company. The company has prospered under his tutelage, and that's great. He may be an excellent CEO, but you mentioned stock options, and I want to go there because this is a passionate issue, at least for me. Stock options that are issued by companies, they're supposed to align the interests of management with the shareholder. As a money manager myself, I fail to see that. They seem to treat this as, it's paper money. They can just dilute the shareholders, because to understand what a stock option is, I want to lay that out exactly how this happens. All that happens here is that the board of directors says that CEO is entitled to, say, 100,000 stock options priced at a certain price. And for every dollar above that price, that's how much he's going to make on that option. And they just do that. But to keep the dilution in line, what they do is go out and buy stock in the open marketplace. I believe Cisco Corporation has been doing this for decades to the tune of billions of dollars. That's shareholder money that is being spent to buy in the stock so they can afford to pay these, what I think are outrageous packages. Yes, they're very talented individuals, but do we need to have that kind of incentive in America, or should something be done about it?
Well, we knew we had some problems with the use of stock options even years ago. Even a great company such as Apple, in one of its happier moments, we saw problems. Some companies like United Healthcare and others, where we saw that people were playing games with the stock options and actually backdating them, trying to game the system for where the strike price would be at some artificially low number. So the options do create some weird incentives, and they're also some have argued they're very short-term in nature.
Do we see that going on still? The backdating of stock options?
No, not that we know of. We do see a pattern though moving more toward restricted stock grants. So you're actually given the stock, and it vests over a period of time. You don't take full possession of it unless you say stay for 3 years, and there could even be performance targets built in with that. But that's a little bit different than the options. But in this one case study, we have a guy who's making what we say with this, $150 million pension or whatever. He also last year got a $131 million of pay separate from that. I mean, separate from that.
Well,
again,
I said 50 million earlier. What got it to 131?
The 131 is he drew 6.3 million in salary and bonus. This is last year. So this is 2011. So in 2012 he was down to a mere 50 million. But in 2011 he got 131 million in total pay. He had 6.3 in straight salary and bonus, but then he had, to your point, 112 million for the exercise of vested stock options.
It brings up a larger point. It brings up a larger point, Jeff. Part of the reason, part of the message that's come in the last number of years is, and something that economists have pointed to, is that the spread between the uber rich and the poor in terms of wealth is probably at its widest point in history. And if you go back through history, it's how societies ends. It was the fall of Rome. You can go back through and see numbers of examples like this. And it's kind of, when I talk to corporate governance experts about this, some people, other than yourself, don't address the real problem. The question is, should we have this? It seems like if you're in the club, you're for stock options. If you're in the club. But if you're not in the club, then you're somebody like myself, who's not in the club, is piling on against it. And I think the big issue here is, what I don't want to see is reward for bad performance, because it brings up to mind a case that I think of that I've harped on time and time again is Nardelli from Home Depot, who was forced to leave the company because he was doing a poor job, and he walked away with more than $200 million as a severance package. What can we do about it?
For slicing shareholder wealth in half.
Yeah, virtually, yes.
Carly Fiorina had about a third that package at Hewlett-Packard. So you could say, well, poor thing, she didn't do as well as Nardelli, but she too sliced shareholder wealth in half. And we can just see that these have been the abuses. Whereas on the other hand, you have some people who've become enormously wealthy, whether or not it's Larry Ellison of Oracle or the late Steve Jobs, or of course Bill Gates, who tops the list again, or Bernie Marcus of the Home Depot, and more power to them. That's a great thing about our system, is that we have known for decades. This is a country that celebrates success, but we want to know that it's done with fair metrics. And people who created businesses, like the founder of the Home Depot, the creator of whether or not.
But what's clear here, Jeff, is we're not talking about founders, are we?
No, we're not talking about founders or people who have had a lot of personal risk at stake. You get high rewards with high risk, but this is they're outsized returns. And sometimes I've known people on the boards of some of these places, and you think, shame on them. What are they doing? They sleep at the switch. We had a period of time where 10, 12 years ago, we saw out-and-out corruption, and we had what you were talking about just as we began our discussion in your lead-in.
Okay, Jeff, I'm sorry. We're going to have to cut it short because we're running out of time, but